I was going on 13 years old the first time I took a life.
¿Qué tipo de arma tenían? ¿Qué tipo de armas tenían?
45, 45.
Presentar armas, ya. Firmes, ya. Posición 1, ya.
When we think of drug cartels, we often picture hardened criminals and seasoned veterans with no regard for human suffering. But there's a disturbing trend that's been growing in recent years, and that's the recruitment of children into these violent organizations. It's a shocking reality that's hard to fathom. Kids as young as 11 or 12 being inducted into a life of crime, violence, and very often their untimely passing.
How old is the little dude over there? 13. That is young, isn't it, to get involved in this game?
And the cartels aren't shy about this practice either. They actively seek out vulnerable youth, offering them a twisted version of family, purpose, and financial stability. But at what cost? These children are robbed of their innocence, forced to commit unspeakable acts, and often meet tragic ends before they even reach adulthood. Let's delve into the stories of some of the youngest cartel members, exploring how they got involved, what roles they played, and the devastating consequences of their choices. Raul Mesa Torrez. The first stop in our journey is the story of Raul Mesa Torrez, also known as El Mini 6, and this story's about to blow your mind. Let's start from the very beginning. It's October 31st, 1991, in Culiacan, Sinaloa. While most kids are being born into a world of trick-or-treating and spooky costumes, little Raul is entering a real-life horror show. You see, Raul wasn't just born on Halloween. He was born into the heart of the Sinaloa cartel's territory. Now, I know what you're thinking. So what? Lots of kids are born in tough neighborhoods. But Raul wasn't just any kid. He was narco royalty, born with a silver spoon in one hand and a golden gun in the other. So, let's break down this family tree. Raul's dad, Raul Mesa Ontiveros, wasn't just in the cartel. He was a legend. Known as LM6, Papa Mesa was so high up the cartel ladder that he was practically touching the clouds. He was the right-hand man of Javier Torrez Felix, who in turn was one of the top dogs working for the infamous Ismael El Mayo Zambada. Are you keeping up? Because it gets even crazier. Raul's mom, Ida Elizabeth Torrez Felix, wasn't just married to the mob. She was born into it too. She was the sister of her husband's boss. Talk about keeping it in the family, right? And just to put the cherry on top of this crime family sundae, by the time Raul hit puberty, he was dating Teresa Zambada Niebla, the daughter of El Mayo himself. So, while most of us were learning our ABCs and playing with Legos, little Raul was getting a first-class education in the family business. And by family business, we talking about one of the most powerful and violent drug trafficking organizations in the world. Fast forward to Raul at 15. Most teens are worrying about acne and algebra, but not our boy. He was fully immersed in cartel life, earning himself the nickname El Mini 6, a nod to his dad's alias. But Raul wasn't content living in his father's shadow. He was determined to make a name for himself. Raul quickly gained a reputation as a young assassin for the cartel. The older members respected him, some even predicting he'd be the next big thing. And the younger ones, they straight up idolized him. But Raul's story takes a dark turn in March 2007. His dad, the legendary LM6, gets killed in a shootout. Now, you'd think this would be a wake-up call, right? But for Raul, it had the opposite effect. Instead of backing off, he doubled down. His violent lifestyle went into overdrive, like he was trying to prove something to his dead father's ghost. Was he trying to fill his old man's shoes? Prove he was worthy of the family name? We'll never know for sure. But what we do know is that Raul's recklessness soon caught up with him. October 9th, 2007, just a few months after his dad's death, Raul has his first run-in with the law. Law enforcement agents catch him cruising around in an armored vehicle with no license plates. Now, to you and me, that screams stolen, but Raul just claimed it was his. He got arrested, but he didn't stay locked up for long. Maybe it was because he was still a minor, or maybe those family connections came in handy. Either way, he was back on the streets as if nothing really happened. Now, most people would have taken this as a warning, a chance to change course, but not Raul. He was like a fish in water, and that water was violence. It was his oxygen, his way of life. There was no other path for him. By 2009, Raul's playing with fire again. This time, he's caught drag racing in the same area where he got busted before. But when officers show up to shut down the party, Raul doesn't go quietly. Instead, he opens fire on them, injuring one officer before making his getaway. But, as they say, you can only tempt fate so many times before it bites you right back. And for Raul, that day came on April 29th, 2010, just a few months after his 18th birthday. It's a routine police patrol, nothing special. The cops spot a suspicious vehicle and decide to check it out. Inside, Raul and his buddy Fidel Rojas Felix, another Sinaloa cartel member. Now, Raul's faced with a choice: surrender and risk arrest, or fight back. For a kid who's been living on the edge his whole life, it's not much of a choice at all. He grabs his gun and starts blasting, killing one officer and injuring another. But this time, Raul's luck runs out. In the shootout that follows, he's fatally wounded. They rush him to the hospital, but by the early hours of the next morning, it's all over. Raul Mesa Torrez, El Mini 6, is gone at just 18 years old. It's a tragic end to a life that never really had a chance to begin. Born into the cartel, living for the cartel, and ultimately meeting his fate for the cartel. But Raul's tale is just one of many. Let's shift gears and talk about another young cartel member whose story shocked the world. Edgar Jimenez Lugo, aka El Ponchis. Now, Edgar's story starts off sounding like the American dream. Born on May 8, 1994, in sunny San Diego, California. But don't let that fool you. Edgar's life was about as far from the American dream as you can get. What you're looking at right now is a video of Edgar being interviewed by a reporter.
¿Cómo te llamas?
Edgar. Lugo.
¿Cuántos años tienes?
12.
But this is not your typical interview, and Edgar is not your typical kid. What you're looking at is, in fact, one of the few recorded instances of a cartel hitman admitting to his crimes on camera.
¿A los cuántos años empezaste a ejecutar?
Los 11.
As shocking as it might sound, this is the brutal reality of kids getting into the cartel lifestyle. But how does an American boy end up in this situation? Shortly after he was born, Edgar and his siblings were whisked away to Cuernavaca, Mexico by their paternal grandmother. And this is where things start to go downhill fast. Imagine growing up in a house so crowded, it makes a sardine can look spacious. That was Edgar's reality. He was crammed in with his grandmother, father, aunt, uncle, and 5 siblings. It was like a dysfunctional Brady Bunch, minus the laugh track, and plus, a whole lot of trauma. And speaking of trauma, it wasn't long before Child Protective Services got involved. Why? Because they found cocaine in baby Edgar's bloodstream. You heard that right. While most parents are worried about baby formula, Edgar's caretakers were apparently more concerned with feeding their drug habit. Both of Edgar's parents were deep in the throes of crack cocaine addiction and had more run-ins with the law than they could count. Now, most kids spend their childhood learning to read, write, and play nice with others. But Edgar's childhood was more about learning to survive, and after his grandmother passed, he was even allowed to drop out of school in 3rd grade. Let that sink in for a moment. Most kids are just learning multiplication at that age, but Edgar was already getting a PhD in street life.
¿Desde los 12 perteneces a la banda?
Sí.
The Jimenez siblings grew up in a neighborhood that makes the wrong side of the tracks look like Beverly Hills. We're talking about Jutepec, a working-class suburb of Cuernavaca. Imagine a place where factories outnumber parks, where concrete boxes pass for homes, and where the local gangs and cartels have more influence than the government. That was Edgar's playground. And it's in this environment that Edgar, at the ripe old age of 12, gets involved with the South Pacific Cartel. Now, this particular cartel had a real knack for recruiting kids like Edgar, young, disadvantaged, with little family support. At first, Edgar was just a gopher, running errands and doing odd jobs. But as Edgar showed he could follow orders without question, they started giving him more, let's say, responsibilities.
¿Qué tipo de arma tenían? ¿Qué tipo de armas tenían?
45. 45.
Before long, Edgar was up to his neck in the kind of violence that would make most adults lose sleep. We're talking kidnapping, torture, and even murder. And all of this before his voice had even changed. Edgar's involvement with the cartel didn't stay secret for long. In November 2010, the internet was buzzing with rumors about a hit boy who might be as young as 12. This came after a YouTube video surfaced showing some kids posing next to dead bodies and firearms like they were at some twisted school picture day. One of the boys in the video pointed the finger at Edgar as his partner in crime. Edgar's reign of terror came to an end on December 2nd, 2010. He was captured at a Mexican airport while trying to flee back to the US with his 16-year-old sister, but Edgar's moment in the spotlight was yet to come. On July 26, 2011, the world's eyes turned to a courtroom in Mexico where a 14-year-old boy stood before a judge facing charges that would make even a seasoned criminal blush: homicide, kidnapping, drug, and weapons possession. Edgar's rap sheet read like a screenplay for a crime thriller. But the kicker? He was accused of killing 4 people and leaving their bodies hanging from a bridge. As the cameras flashed and the world watched, Edgar calmly admitted to his crimes.
¿Tú eres el que sales en el video golpeando a un sujeto que está colgado en una casa?
Sí.
¿Y cuántos ejecutaste, dices?
4.
¿Cómo los ejecutaste? ¿Cómo los ejecutaste?
Los degollé.
Edgar claimed he was forcibly recruited by the cartel and put through a training program that would make military boot camp look like summer camp. Kidnappings, executions, drug trafficking. It was all in a day's work for young Edgar. And the kicker? He said he virtually had no choice but to do as he was told.
¿Dónde aprendiste a ejecutar, a golpear? ¿Te drogabas?
Me drogaba el negro.
¿Te drogaba el negro? ¿Desde cuándo te drogaba el negro?
Desde los 12.
But here's a detail that really drives home the insanity of it all. Edgar revealed he was paid to do the cartel's dirty work.
¿Cuánto te pagaban?
Los 500.
¿Semanales?
Sí.
$2,500, that's more than most adults in his hometown would make in months of honest work. This is exactly how cartels can make this lifestyle seem attractive to kids with few other options.
¿Tienes miedo? ¿Tú tienes miedo? ¿No tienes miedo?
After he was arrested, Edgar spilled the beans. He calmly confessed to at least 7 brutal crimes, including several beatings. And remember, this is all before he was old enough to legally drive a car.
¿Sabes lo que va a pasar?
Sí.
¿Sabes que te van a llevar y te van a juzgar por delitos federales? ¿Estás consciente de eso?
Edgar's case sparked a heated debate about how to handle juvenile offenders involved in such serious crimes. After all, what do you do with a kid who's committed multiple crimes before he's even hit puberty? Despite the gravity of his actions, he was tried as a minor. On July 26, 2011, he got 3 years in a correctional facility, the maximum penalty for a minor under Mexican law. Now, I know what you're thinking. Just 3 years for his crimes? Seems like a slap on the wrist, right? But here's the thing. Edgar's case is just the tip of the iceberg.
Tenemos un par de cifras. Una es la de los 30,000 niñas, niños y adolescentes que efectivamente podemos contabilizar que forman parte de las redes de la criminalidad organizada.
You heard that right. 30,000 teenagers, all members of the cartel. That's more than the population of some small towns, all caught up in this cycle of violence and crime. And here's where it gets crazy. Many of these young recruits are given a choice that's no choice at all: kill or be killed. It's a brutal initiation into a world no child should ever have to experience.
Bueno, ya están aquí. El que se quiere ir, que se vaya ahorita. Y corto con esto. Aquí la única forma que te vayas es por patas por delante.
This is a chilling glimpse into the methods cartels use to keep these kids in line. It's clear that, for many of these young recruits, there's really no easy way out once they're in. The stories of Raul and Edgar are tragic, no doubt about it, but they're also a wake-up call. They force us to confront the harsh realities of the drug trade and its impact on the most vulnerable members of society. These kids, born into poverty and violence, never really had a chance at a normal life. And until we address the root causes that drive children into the arms of cartels, stories like theirs will continue to be all too common. So, the next time you hear about cartel violence on the news, remember Raul and Edgar. Remember that behind the headlines and body counts, there are often children, lost, scared, and caught up in a world they never asked to be part of. Now, you might be thinking, surely these stories of young boys in cartels are as bad as it gets. But we're now about to meet a young lady who gives the boys a run for their money. Meet Jocelyn Alejandra Nino, aka La Flaca. Born sometime in the 1990s in Tamaulipas, northeastern Mexico, La Flaca's story proves that the cartel life isn't just a boys' club. You see, these equal opportunity criminals are more than happy to recruit young girls too. Now, we don't know much about La Flaca's early years, but one thing's for sure, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Poverty, instability, and maybe even some family connections to the cartels. That's a recipe for disaster. La Flaca was still in her teens and probably hadn't even finished high school when she got recruited by the Gulf Cartel. Now, you might think they'd start her off easy, right? Maybe as a lookout or using her youthful charm to lure in targets. But La Flaca had other ideas. This young lady wasn't content to play second fiddle. She wanted to be front and center in the action. And before anyone knew what hit them, she'd proven herself to be one of the most ruthless members of the cartel. But here's where La Flaca's story takes a turn for the worse, if that's even possible, in the world of cartels. Now, in most cases, having your photo go viral might be a good thing. For an up-and-coming Instagram influencer or TikTok star, it could be their big break. But for a cartel assassin, it was the worst thing that could happen. This is the photo that started it all. In it, La Flaca can be seen smiling charmingly while holding an assault rifle, as if this is just another regular day for her. This is a young girl looking like she should be heading to prom, casually holding a weapon of war and smiling like she's posing for a yearbook photo. Now, this might make La Flaca look pretty intimidating to me and you, but for rival cartel members, that's another story. To them, the photo showed a different side of La Flaca. It wasn't the tough-as-nails cartel assassin, but a young woman who looked, well, normal. What's worse, the photo spread like wildfire across social media platforms, Twitter, Facebook, you name it, La Flaca's face was on it. And with every share, every like, the target on her back grew bigger. You see, La Flaca wasn't just any cartel member. She was part of a faction called Los Ciclones, and they had some pretty nasty enemies. One of them, a rival gang called Los Metros, saw this viral photo as an opportunity. They figured if they could get La Flaca's face out there, it would be easier for the authorities to find her. Tragically, their plan worked all too well. Between April 12 and 13, 2015, La Flaca was captured by Los Metros, along with two of her accomplices. And I wish I could tell you this story has a happy ending, but the reality of cartel life is far from a fairy tale. The way La Flaca died was brutal, even by cartel standards. It's the kind of thing that makes you want to look away, but we owe it to her memory to acknowledge the horrific reality of her end. Her body was dismembered and then in a beer cooler. It's a pretty sobering reminder of the fate that awaits many young people who get caught up in the cartel life. One minute you're on top of the world, the next, well, you're stuffed in a beer cooler. The rival cartel didn't stop at just disposing La Flaca and her companions. No, they had to send a message, so they also left a note with the bodies, a chilling warning for other Los Ciclones to see. Sadly, this is the disposable nature of these young lives in the eyes of the cartels. One minute, you're a rising star, and the next, you're just another cautionary tale. La Flaca's story, like those of Raul and Edgar before her, paints a dark picture of life for young cartel members. But it's crucial to remember that these children aren't born killers. They're products of their environment, shaped by circumstances often beyond their control. So, how do cartels manage to recruit so many young people? Well, it's a combination of many factors, and none of them are pretty. First off, there's poverty. In many parts of Mexico, economic opportunities are about as rare as a snowball in the Sahara. Families struggle to put food on the table, and kids grow up seeing no way out. Then, along comes the cartel, flashing cash and promising a better life. To a hungry kid with no prospects, it can seem like a lifeline.
¿Cuáles son sus nombres?
Eric y Manuel,
Eric y Manuel. ¿De dónde son originarios?
de Reynosa, Tamaulipas.
¿Qué piensan hacer?
Vamos a hacer del cartel del Golfo.
El cartel del Golfo. ¿No quieres estudiar tú, joven?
No, eso ya es para niños chiquitos.
¿No te importa el estudio?
No, nada.
This exchange is utterly heartbreaking. These kids see joining a cartel as their best option. School? That's for little kids. In their minds, the real path to success is through the cartels. It's a mindset that's hard to shake once really it takes root. But it's not just poverty that drives kids into the cartels. Some, like Raul Mesa Torrez, are born into families deeply entrenched in the drug trade. For these children, the cartel lifestyle is as normal as Sunday dinner. They grow up seeing their family members involved in illegal activities, and it becomes a natural path for them to follow. The cartels also prey on the natural desire of young people to belong and to prove themselves. They offer a twisted sense of family and purpose to kids who may feel lost or alienated in their communities. It's like joining a gang, but with higher stakes and more deadly consequences.
How old is the little dude over there? 13. That is young, isn't it, to get involved in this game?
Pues está pequeño, pero entre más pequeño más aprende y le gusta.
Cartels view these children as malleable, easier to shape into the kind of soldiers they need, and, tragically, as the quote suggests, some of these kids do come to enjoy the power and status that comes with their role in the cartel. But what exactly do these young cartel members do? Their roles can vary widely depending on their age, skills, and the needs of the cartel. Some start as lookouts or halcones, keeping an eye out for law enforcement or rival cartel members. Others might begin as drug mules, transporting small quantities of drugs. But then, as they prove themselves more, they may be given more responsibility and more dangerous tasks. This could include anything from extortion and kidnapping to assassination. The cartels often use these young members for some of their most brutal acts, knowing that their age makes them less likely to face severe legal consequences if caught.
I've done the simple stuff that everybody starts doing, and teeth out, putting fingers up, slowly.
These are the kind of acts these young cartel members are expected to perform. What's most chilling is the casual way it's described as simple stuff, an indicator of how desensitized to violence these children become. The impact of this early exposure to violence and crime can't be overstated. Many of these young cartel members develop severe psychological issues, including PTSD, depression, and substance abuse problems. They often struggle to form normal relationships or function in society outside of the cartel structure. That being said, their chances of living to adulthood are significantly reduced, if not completely gone. Whether through violence from rival cartels, confrontations with law enforcement, or even punishment from their own organization, many of these young recruits meet early and violent ends. The stories of Raul, Edgar, and Lafa are just the tip of the iceberg. The Network for the Rights of Children in Mexico estimates that there are around 30,000 children and teens involved in cartels. It's a number that's hard to wrap your head around. That's more than the entire population of some small towns, all caught up in this cycle of violence and crime. So, what can be done about this? Well, no one really has the answer. Addressing poverty and lack of opportunities in cartel-controlled areas is crucial, that's for sure. Providing better education and support for at-risk youth could help prevent recruitment. And of course, continuing to fight against the cartels themselves is necessary. But perhaps most importantly, we need to change the narrative. The glamorization of cartel life in media and popular culture needs to stop. We need to show the real, brutal truth of what happens to these kids. Maybe then, when a young person is faced with the choice to join a cartel, they'll think twice. As we wrap up our journey through the dark world of young cartel members, I want you to remember Raul, Edgar, and Lafa. Remember their stories, their lost childhoods, their tragic ends, because behind every cartel headline, every drug bust, every border wall debate, there are thousands of kids just like them. Kids who never really had a chance, who were born into a world that seemed to offer them no other path. Now, let's ask ourselves this: how can we really stop these kids from joining the cartels? Feel free to share your ideas in the comment section below. And if you've enjoyed this video, then make sure to give it a thumbs up and to subscribe if you haven't already. Until next time, stay safe.